Update. My 28 female parents were given $30,000 for my grandparents for a wedding and down payment for me. They spent all of it in vacations and now want me to take out a loan for a wedding. Original post. Long story short, my grandparents are wealthy. My mother is very spoiled and self-centered. Additionally, I believe she likely has a cluster B personality disorder. Every single situation is somehow about her. My dad's side can't stand her because she sows chaos anywhere she goes. For example, my dad's side threw a birthday party for one of my cousins. The whole day was focused on a fight because she spent $8 on ingredients to make a lasagna to bring, then ruins the poor kid's birthday. This is just one example, but this every situation, every time she's the center of everything. Her family is pretty wild. I've been present for multiple fist fights between her and her sisters. Every fight stems from someone getting more money than the other. One time, my mom had a phone cord wrapped around my aunt's neck. Although terrible, it was kind of impressive to be honest, as my mom's a small person. Anyway, despite my grandparents being wealthy, I grew up pretty poor in the beginning. My mom got cut off a few years, probably had something to do with the phone cord incident. I remember going to food banks for food, clothes for donations, etc. When things did get better, my parents refused to spend any money on me. If I had clothes for school, it was because my aunt bought me an outfit for Christmas. I mean, they were ridiculous with it. My grandfather, dad's side, tried to get custody of me due to neglected alcoholism. As for the wealthy grandparents, look, I'm not entitled. It's their money. But every grandchild except me got their college paid for, got a car, a down payment on a house, and a wedding. Super freaking generous. I was just hurt that I got none of these things. It felt personal. I felt it was their way of communicating that they loved me less, and that damaged our relationship. Fast forward to this week. I'm engaged. I wasn't expecting a big wedding. I was okay with eloping. But I figured my parents might want to do something since I'm their only kid. So I asked them what they wanted to do. Well, my mom was drunk because, it's 2 p.m., confesses to the $30,000 thing. Then the next day, nonstop pressuring me into taking out a loan. I refused and say, "You were given $30,000 for a wedding and a down payment, but you decided vacations and cars were more important." Then the whole thing gets turned into, poor her. Can you believe she won't get to plan a wedding with her daughter because the daughter expects a wedding to be paid in full? What a spoiled witch. Now I have relatives calling me up with this BS. They're under the impression that I'm being a diva. I keep dodging the conversation, but I don't know how long I can do it. Because once my relatives find out, there is no saving her reputation with them. Also, through all of this, found out my grandparents did give money for college. The problem is they gave it to my mom and she spent it. It must have been a decent amount too because my grandparents are under the impression that they paid my college in full. I'm at a loss. I haven't talked to my parents in a week. I know they're my parents and I need to forgive them no matter what, but this is hard. It almost feels like they aren't my parents anymore. That bonding feeling, or whatever it is gone. Sorry that this post was long. It felt cathartic typing this out. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Are your grandparents still alive? If yes, then tell them everything about what happened to the money. If they aren't, tell your relatives everything. And I mean the entire truth. What's the point trying to cover up your mom's reputation when clearly she's a horrible person? How long will you keep enabling her and her condescending attitude? Choice is yours. Oh, be this. You haven't done anything to your mom's reputation. She did all of that, and you're the victim. Don't let her turn you into the devil for this. She's a narcissist and needs to be shown for who she is. Jumping on this to add that OP is under no obligation to forgive her parents no matter what. Everyone gets to choose where their line is, and when/if they want a relationship with someone. Cut out all of the middlemen and speak to your grandparents. Explain to them that the reason you're not speaking to your parents is that they have recently confessed that they spent the college and wedding money that your grandparents gave to them that was intended for you. Explain to your grandparents that you're extremely hurt by this, because not only does it show how dishonest, selfish, and unloving your parents are towards you, but you have existed for years believing that you were the only grandchild that your grandparents never helped for some unfathomable reason. And so you always felt rejected and cast aside by them too. The damage that has been done by their actions is wide-ranging. And not only are you emotionally hurt, but you have college debt and could be in a significantly better financial position if this hadn't happened. It's also worth pointing out that in most countries, this would constitute fraud and theft. They have defrauded your grandparents by pretending to have used this money for the intended purpose. They have stolen this money from you. Your mother asking you to take out the loan is not about wanting to plan your wedding. It's about the fact that she wants to continue the lie to your grandparents. Her plan is that you take out the loan, have a $30,000 wedding, and she tells them that their money paid for it, while you were left with more debt, on top of your college debt. Do not assist your mother in defrauding your grandparents further. This is your grandparents' money. They deserve to know the truth of what happened to it, and why in all these years you never thanked them for any of the money they believed they gave you. Honestly, this would be enough for me to never speak to my parents again. I would even consider reporting them to the police, but I guess your grandparents would need to support that. Your parents' actions are so selfish and cruel it's unreal, and the fact other relatives try to save you from their care speaks volumes. Why your grandparents thought giving them the money was a good idea, I don't know. Please note also that throughout all of this, I have said parents, although you seem very focused on your mother alone. This was both of your parents. There is no excuse for your father having allowed any of this to happen. He is just as culpable and has benefited from the theft of your money. Once your grandparents are aware, tell your other relatives. You have done nothing wrong and don't deserve to suffer the consequences of keeping their actions a secret. And now for the update 1 year later. Not the exact wording of the first post, but it's still up. It is now a little over a year since. I appreciate all of the replies and I apologize for not getting back to everyone, but I read all of them. A lot of you showed sympathy for my grandparents, which is fair. But I think I should disclose that my grandfather is not the most ethical person. PS/was a really cutthroat business person. He was very awful to his children. Also, once he starts giving you huge gifts, he feels you're indebted to him. I was in shock and very emotional when I wrote that post. I went to Reddit because I felt I couldn't get it together enough to remain calm when talking to anyone else. I have a tendency to come off as defensive, which makes it seem like I did something wrong, which I think they were banking on. I didn't talk to my parents or any of my family much for a month. There was a word going around that I blew all the money. It was laying low until it all blew over. Then when people started asking me directly about it, I was able to remain calm and say I was never offered any money. People really grilled me about where the money went. I never got emotional or defensive. Just, I was never offered any money. Maybe you should ask them about the BMW. So everyone knows. I was afraid they wouldn't believe me at first. But considering my parents were financially abusive in my younger years, it wasn't a far stretch. I never planned a wedding because I knew my parents would lie and say they paid for it. I really considered going no contact. My husband talked me into low contact. But we both agreed that we will never give them any money or nice gifts. We will do the bare minimum. As for my grandparents, this conflict is now between them and my parents. Again, everyone is fully aware and no one faults me. Your parents stole the money from your grandparents, intended not only for your wedding, but another considerable sum for your education? Then they expect you to take out a loan to pay for your mom to have the pleasure of organizing your wedding? They are complete narcissists. Firstly, congratulations on your marriage. Sounds like you had a low-key wedding. Good on you for celebrating within your budget and making the best art possible in your marriage. Secondly, I'm amazed how you have remained calm and dignified with your relatives as they speculated about your spending. The truth is out, but nobody's agitating on your behalf for your parents to make restitution for their thievery. I hope your mother's share of the inheritance is adjusted for this sum once your grandmother passes. Finally, your parents have inadvertently given you the gift of self-reliance, which will serve you well into the future as you pay off college debt and save for your children's future and your retirement. Is that how they justified withholding the money from you? Since maybe your mom never got anything from her parents? Honestly, it's not worth talking to them to find out. All the best for a future filled with love for the family you've created for yourself. My mother did get a lot from her parents, but they cut her off for a period of time. I don't think this even registers in her mind is wrong. When I was a young teen, I had to get a job to help pay for basic hygiene products and clothes. They were authorized on my bank account since I was a minor. They wouldn't let me have access to it and stole money from it constantly. They always treated me like I was a financial burden just for existing. They expected their siblings and parents to pay for my necessities. I think they feel this is reimbursement for raising me. I'm angry on your behalf that your extended family knew of this financial mistreatment, and yet did nothing to help you. Parents are obligated to nurture and look after their children. Your parents' narcissism knows no bounds. In some ways, I'm glad you're not completely no contact, as seeing them occasionally just reminds you how far you've moved on from them. I hope your in-laws are fabulous. I think your husband is wrong about low contact. It should be no contact. What's the point of having them in your life? They sound awful and abusive. So, your grandparents gifted you $30,000 and your parents spent it? Or to rephrase that, your parents blew $30,000 of your money? Why are you still in contact with these people? I get their family, but they don't seem to give a crap about you. They actually handed my parents $50,000. They wanted them to use that $50,000 to pay for a wedding, put a down payment on a home for me, and use the remainder, no more than $20,000, towards their debt. Unfortunately, they gave the money to them, not me. They wanted my parents to be responsible for divvying out the money. I guess to make sure I made good decisions when purchasing. But they didn't do that. Legally, I don't have a leg to stand on. There was no paperwork. It was a gift. And believe me, my grandparents would not look kindly on me taking this to court and would not back me up. They're also both in poor health, and I don't want to put that extra chaos on them. I don't know how much longer they're going to live. Next story. I found out that my parents paid out my sister's tuition loans and pressured them to keep it a secret from me. Not that I'm jealous or even slightly upset. I'm just curious to find out why, and more importantly, why they stressed it should be kept a secret from me. My 23 male recently graduated from a top master's degree. During my undergrad, I had many scholarships and grants. Everything was virtually free. For the miscellaneous, it was super expensive, so I took out a loan to cover the cost. It was fine by me because now I make twice as much as I paid, and I can easily redeem my debt if I wanted to. My parents didn't contribute to my education, and I never asked them to. Recently, I found out that my sisters, 25 and 21, had no outstanding debt. I had to arrange trades and due diligence in their accounts. As requested, it was surprised to see no debt, considering that a year earlier they couldn't stop complaining about it. $150,000 combined. I was happy for them at first glance, but when I told them about it over Thanksgiving, they seemed shaken, like I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. A few days later, my older sister told me that our parents paid everything for them, and were clear in instructing them to keep me in the dark. I asked why, but couldn't get a definitive answer. From what I could tell, my sister knows the reason, but has refused to tell me. I'm just really curious. I have a great relationship with my parents. They've always been positive about my education and work. I'm just fretting the possibility they might be thinking I'm a failure or too reckless or such like. Again, I earn decently and live very comfortably, and my parents know all about it. Not sure if I'm just making a big deal out of nothing, but would really appreciate any insight here. Do I just leave it behind or talk about it? It's pretty awful for your parents to do that. It's one thing to pay for them and not you, but it's another thing to lie and hide it. Rather than them thinking you're a failure, I'd say it's much more likely they knew you'd make it on your own without their help. They may not have been so confident in your sisters. It's not pretty crappy of his parents to do so. It's super crappy. Talk to them. You're not making a big deal out of nothing. It's a huge deal for them to treat you so differently to your sisters and to keep it a secret from you. Anyone in your position would be hurt and questioning their motives. Talk to your parents. Whether you really need the money or not, it's BS to give two kids $150,000 and a third kid $0. Even if you were totally debt-free, if they had $150,000 total to give their kids, each should have gotten an equal amount. As an aside, it'd be totally normal for you to be jealous and upset. This is BS on your parents' part, and you are allowed to have feelings about it. I agree 100% this is not right, and clearly they know it was wrong. That's why they kept it a secret. I would disagree that everyone should always get an equal amount. Opie seems to be more gifted than his siblings. Life is never fair with what it hands out. You may argue that it's his hard work and diligence that got him where he is, and you would be absolutely right. But if you think about it, some people can put in the work and some cannot. Maybe it's the people they meet. Maybe it is the way they're born. Maybe it is about the expectations from you. Whatever is the reason, Opie is far better off than her siblings. If they gave $50,000 to Opie, it would definitely be nice, but it wouldn't be life-changing. That money was probably life-changing for his siblings. But if you're not equally dividing things, it can definitely create problems. The correct thing to do would be to talk to the Opie about this. If they said that they were thinking about paying off sister's debt and they thought since Opie is doing well enough, would he let them off the hook? I believe Opie wouldn't be upset about it at all. But the secrecy, the exclusion it brings, the feeling of things going on behind your back, that's just unnecessary pain they caused by choosing to go behind his back. Now for the last story. My female 17 parents have taken all my savings that I was preparing for university. What can I do? The title really says it all. I am unbelievably upset and exhausted that I just don't know what to do. I had over $4,000 saved from working the last few years that I was going to use for university next year, but it was in an account my parents controlled. My mom is a gambler and spends almost every evening at VLTs. And now she took my money to cover basic expenses like insurance and power bills. I just don't know what to do now other than wait until I can move out in July. I love my mother, but she's really screwed me over. I know there isn't a way I can get the money back. I don't even know what to say to her. Now for the advice. This happened to me before I graduated high school as well. Saved all my Christmas and birthday money every year because I knew I wanted to go to college when I finished high school. After graduating, I asked where the money was, and my parents said that it went toward my rent for the past 18 years. That makes my blood boil. They chose to have you. So any living cost incurred for the first 18 years was completely on them. I can only imagine what they spent the money on. When you get the chance, cut your contact. Eliminate what is toxic in your life and focus on making yourself happy. Also, take some solace in the fact that $4,000 is like a couple pennies when it comes to loans like that. I have no idea how she's able to access your money, but you should probably make a bank account that she can't get into. If you're under 18, you legally can't have a bank account in the US without an adult co-signing, meaning they have joint access to the account. Normally, parents aren't crappy enough to take money from their own kids, but it does still happen.